computer. Today is June 19th, and this is a conversation today between Susan Fisher, Natural Energy 6, and Morten Nygård, Natural Energy 3. And we're going to have a conversation today about how we learned to be able to identify a person's natural energy. Go ahead and start, Morten. What was your path? What did you have to learn, and what did you teach yourself?
Well, one of the things that I had to do is to backtrack. I had to go back to the source of this, go back to my soul and be with myself until I could handle myself in all kinds of ways. So the way I did it is I had to slow down the pace. It was my first thing. I used about 1 year to walk slowly, to do things slowly, to touch things, and to not go too fast, which was my typical tree thing, is to be too fast. So the decisions I made usually was too fast, and then I had to clean it up afterwards because I didn't have time to be with the process that was needed to be able to be with another person. So that was my first issue, is to be able to create a really, really nice atmosphere in myself by slowing down how I walked, how I talked, how I smiled, and not so I wasn't jumping over something. That was my first step.
To slow down. And that slowing down, what did that give to you? What did that create for you?
It created an opportunity to, in a way, be able to touch another person's soul by my whole body, instead of jumping into it, jumping too fast to a conclusion. And the way I did it is that I actually I rearranged my life. So I started to walk out in the woods, and I was sitting by myself in the woods, and I did a camp. It doesn't mean that other people do need to do this. This is important. But I had to sit and be with myself. I walked very slowly into the woods. I was sitting down and created a campfire, and I was able to start to feel, which is I think one of the biggest issue in this work is to start to feel where in the body something is going on. Where is the energy active in the body? And I realized that it was some of the energies that I was able to do, to activate by myself. And I get clear that it was some of them I wasn't able to activate.
So you could tell you had access to something different with some of the energies, and then the other ones, nothing was happening, essentially.
Nothing was happening. So, for example, 8 was a big issue for me. I didn't have any contact with 8. So as soon as I was supposed to do 8, I couldn't find it, or it hurts actually in my backbone, in my hips, when I was supposed to move, like the 8th move, that's the hips is like a gyro. So I started to work on that. I did different exercises. And I started to understand that I wasn't able to create a really welcoming atmosphere in my body for other people.
So welcoming atmosphere in your body.
Yeah.
What does that mean to somebody that's standing across from you?
It means that I'm safe. It means that I'm not going after them. It means that I'm not attractive. I'm just very solidly in myself. But I'm not doing anything. I'm just very present in my body. And I had to rearrange my food, my sleeping routines, and most of all, I had to slow down the pace.
And do you think that's specific for 3, or do you think there's an aspect of that for all people?
Well, it could be that this is my way to figure this out, and most likely it is because you have another way. But I think that the process of being able to identify is very, very, very close to the way the nature grows. I think it's very similar to how what do you call it, insemination, and a child is growing through the 9 months in the womb. There has to be a very good atmosphere, and it has to be, you have to be, or I had to be able to feel. And I'm not talking about feelings like feelings of I love you, feelings of I want something, feelings of I hurt or something, but feel what was going on in the different areas in my body.
So you had to actually learn to feel what happened in each of the 9 centers in order to understand what was happening in the body of another person?
Yeah, and that's when I started to orientate myself from inside. I realized that there was some of that. Then we're back to I could realize that I didn't have activated all 9.
Mm-hmm. So you realized you needed to do that.
Yes, and then I started to do that by working, and I did a lot of movement training, and I did a lot of meditation, and I did a lot of standing in front of another person without doing anything.
Of the energies you weren't as comfortable with, or?
Yes.
So just learning from their bodies.
Yeah, learning from there, because there is an acceptance of all the 9 that has to be really, really equal. And an equal acceptance of all the 9. If you have an issue with one of the 9 energies, they are not, honestly, not activated in you.
Yeah, right, because you don't understand how beautiful.
Yeah, you're not able to.
Yeah. Interesting. So you worked on your body, you worked on through relationship with others and exercises to essentially isolate those areas of the body, and then to allow your body to move into the activation of those centers individually. Yeah. And did you practice them in any kind of order, or did it seem to matter to you?
No,
in terms of?
it seemed to matter. I worked with I constantly had trainings with, I have a group which I teach every Wednesday. And through that teaching, I was able to be with people, and some of them I didn't know which type they were, and some of them were actually mistyped. So by activating myself, I started to see, and I started to clean up myself. So there is a cleansing process it's going on I think for a while. And then for a while, I mean, for me, it was 2-3 years.
So you took 2 or 3 years doing this on your own to find a way to feel all the energies in your body?
Yeah, because when I started to get this 8 and 4 going inside of me, I got so uncomfortable when I mistyped after. So I got basically physically sick.
When you got 4 and 8, were they your last 2 energies, or were they, what was the sequence you learned them in?
Well, I worked a lot on myself, because it was the 3 that I had learned from before wasn't the 3 I know today. Mm-hmm. So I did a lot of work on my own energy to be really comfortable with what this is about. So I was able to figure out more about 3, how I align myself with the universe. It's maybe somebody thinks this is weird, but I had to figure out specifically how I align myself. And for me, I had to have breaks from everything to be able to feel my soul on my own.
So getting out in nature was how you took those breaks.
Yeah, that was one of the ways I did it. I spent 4 years in the nature every morning, not as a discipline, but
As a way of life.
it was a way of life. It was like eating, or I just did it. And you know, as a tree, you have the capacity to focus on something. Sometimes you don't know if you're focusing on the right thing, but that seems to be the right thing at that time.
So it was nature, people, and then this, you used your focus to actually pay attention to your body, essentially.
Yeah.
Learn to pay attention to your body.
So the brain, my brain wasn't developed to understand the energies because the energies wasn't awakened. So that's the misinterpretation that happens when we do typing in the beginning, is that there is a deep, deep connection between the consciousness in the brain, the 175, I call them, the drive, the 369, and the body. So there is 3 steps, and if the body is not aligned with the energy, and the energy is not aligned with the consciousness that comes in from the universe, you don't understand what's going on. You can freak out by the energy, or you don't understand the consciousness, or your body can't hold it.
Yeah, I mean, my experience once I had active access at will to all 9 energies in my body, so that I could create that activation, there was absolutely a shift in my ability to be with people, to be with myself, to learn and grow. There was an accessibility to information that wasn't available before.
Yeah. But I'm curious about you. And there is a lot more to talk about how I did it, but so I went through it, but I'm curious about, if I understand it right, you went out and you started to type a lot of people.
Yes. So through the training that we went through, I learned to activate all 9 energies in my body. And it was an interesting process. You know, I started with 4 and 7, and they came relatively easily to me. And then 5 was pretty easy. I mean, some of them were like, once I learned how to give over my 6-ness, to essentially release the control that the 6th tone has on my body, which I learned from lying on a tennis ball. I laid on a tennis ball to really totally relax my chest. And that got me 4. So I could actually hold my lower abdomen taut and relax my chest. And then I got a deep, deep, deep 4 experience. It was almost like a rebirth. It was really very powerful. And that was the opening that allowed me to realize what it is to give over to a different part of your body. And then I learned 7, and 7 was so out of body for me, because I live very much in the present moment. 6 is very much right here, right now. Yeah. That when I first left, essentially opens myself to the space of 7. I did fall over after I came back. I held the posture fine, but I did it for a very long time with my friend Laurel, and then literally when she released me from that space, because that's what she did, she actually released me from that space. I no longer sort of knew I had a body, and that was a totally different experience. And that's when I realized, oh, okay, so 4 is a totally different experience, and 7, okay, so they must all be. And so I began that process of looking for, okay, what is it? What's the true world that the other 8 live in? And how does that change what my body can feel and take in. And I think one of the things you just spoke to was the first time is so weird and so uncomfortable because your brain doesn't know how to make sense of those signals.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I realized is, okay, I actually have to stay there long enough to actually begin to make sense of the signals that are coming in and to enjoy that space.
Yeah.
And as each one, I had also, 8 was my last one as well. And which was interesting. And I had a little battle with myself around integrity and what that meant to me. Because as a 6, I'm driven to keep moving, keep things moving. And there's a place in 8 around integrity that causes me to actually pause, at least pause, that I was really unwilling to do. And so I had to learn that last piece. And then we went to Burning Man. And I drove out with 2 4s, and 4 is about alignment with self. And the whole way there, they're like, Susan, why are you not living in alignment with yourself? It's a long drive, 6, 7 hours. They asked me question after question after question after question. This went on and on. And we got to Burning Man. I said, okay, well, there's 60,000 people here. I'm supposed to give a gift. What the hell? And so one guy went running by and I stopped him and just said hi. He had a cast on his leg. And he sat down and we talked to him for a while. And said, would you like to know your superpower, which is what I called it in that environment. And I just sat in front of him and was with him. And he was a 4. And we found that deep 4 place together. And it was so beautiful. It was just easy, beautiful. And I was able to just sit there and be with him in that space. And that began, and over the course of that week, I worked with 56 people. And, it took, I would say, I did a pretty good job with those 56 people. Like, I don't think I've actually re-identified any of those first 56. So the universe gave me this amazing opportunity. And pretty early on, I was doing the 2 dance with a 2. And he said to me, Susan, I just want you to know that was a little bit creepy. I said, well, tell me why it was creepy, because I have no idea why it was creepy. So he taught me how to hold a neutral countenance, to actually stand in front of somebody and not look creepy, which is 2 no's in the body. They know how to be neutral, how to be available. And because he said, I put a smile on my face and just danced around with this crazy smile on my face. So, I had so many gifts from all those people to begin to understand, what do they feel like? What's that like? And I went back and I actually watched a bunch of videos of also how I learned to do this. And in the early days, I understood the process. And I could actually feel and identify, but I didn't know when I knew. And that was a really, really big shift for me. Because at that time, I had no permission around saying, well, okay, what does your body know, Susan?
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't allow myself to make a decision that came from my body.
Yeah.
And that was a big Achilles heel thing. And so these 56 people that I worked with at Burning Man, I was like, well, there's nobody else here that's going to tell me whether I'm right or not. There's nobody that can help me. I'm just standing here in front of these people, and what is of service to them? How do I be of service to them? And there were 1 or 2 that I actually said, no, I don't know what you are. You'll have to come back later. You'll have to come back again. And that was a hard thing to do too. It's like being able to say, I don't know. Because there's times you just don't know. Yeah. And and sitting in the uncertainty until you do is like the willing to sit in the uncertainty until your body speaks to their body and the bond is made.
Yeah. And I
Or
think
the veil is lifted. It's like a veil lifts
yeah,
that separates you.
yeah. It reminds me about, there are two things that really comes up for me when you talk about it, how important it has been. I met a new person in my life, which is Birgit, my she's not my wife, but she's my, I don't want to say girlfriend because she's more than that. She's everything I
She's
have.
your partner.
My partner, yeah. And I met her very early in the beginning when I didn't have everybody included. So I was working with her and I was pushing, and I after I have been doing all nine, I was pushing on her back, and she didn't move, and I couldn't understand what was going on. Before my brain actually said, okay, maybe she's a 9. And in that point, I didn't know what 9 was. Honestly, I didn't have any clue about 9. I had some, I remembered from the past teaching but it didn't have anything to do with this person. It was the most amazing, strongest power I've ever felt from someone. And so I got I was a little bit, okay, I'm not going to, what do I do? And I couldn't get close to her. So she backed away from me every time I came closer for like a long time. We get very curious on each other and we became partners. But the point is that at that point, I tried to teach her. And I tried to teach her something I couldn't teach because I didn't know what 9 was about. So it took a long time before I realized that she had to teach me. And so, and I didn't have any clue about doing all 9s at the same time in a movement. I couldn't move my legs and the arms at the same time. So I started to do the movement training. I used a long time to just do all the 9 different energies in their through the movement.
So you use a combination of posture and movement to teach your body to use the muscles and bones associated with each of the centers.
Yeah, the meditation is nice, but it doesn't, it's like the ground step. I was able to be with myself in the different postures for a while, but you actually have to engage with them. You have to walk with them. You have to move with them. That's one of the big things. And then the next big thing, really huge thing that's happened for me is that the day I called you, I started to see that I wasn't able to clean up what I was doing. I wasn't able to see what was wrong, what was the truth, what was I doing. So I realized that I didn't got the right response from the people I was working for. It was something wrong. I couldn't understand. It was something wrong. And I started to get very confused in my brain, and I didn't felt well because since I didn't knew if I was right, I didn't knew if I was wrong. Mm-hmm. And then I understood, okay, so I have to rearrange my life. Okay, I have to call Susan. I have to contact Susan and just tell the truth. Can you look at me? And it was incredible, vulnerable period. Really a vulnerable period because I was a teacher. You make up things. I mean, you become a teacher and you teach people and you get into a role. So I had to break that completely up and say, okay, I need another person to look at me, tell me the truth. And I knew, okay, so I know one person who's doing this, and her husband Martin they are doing this together. So, okay, let's contact her. And Birgit was very helpful. She was very helpful. So that was the next step where I had to be so vulnerable to be with what another person tells you. And it's so difficult when your mind and your energy doesn't know what's going on, and you have to listen to that person. So I had to become so soft and so, and it was ups and downs, of course. It was crazy. I mean, everything went around in me, but I did it, and that took me to another level. I'm grateful for it and thankful and appreciate that you actually just did your work. I mean, I was standing in front of people and you were looking at me at Skype, and I was working. I couldn't see it. Sometimes I couldn't see anything. I just did exactly what you told me. And then I realized that I was capable to listen to you. And when I was capable to start to listen again, I started to listen to my body again. So that was a different process. Very, very helpful.
Over the course of the last 5 years, since we went to Burning Man in 2012 and worked with those first 56 people, I've just kept working with people. You know, anybody that will stand in front of me, I will identify their energy. And as I talked about, in the beginning, I was getting 80% right.
Yeah.
Which sounds okay when you say 80%. No, but that's actually 1 in 5 that aren't right.
Yeah.
And so I had to sort of be okay with that and stay open to everybody all the time, coming back over and over again until I was really more comfortable. And fortunately, we had a lot of lovely people that, you know, when I misidentified them, would stay with us anyway and would come back and allow me to work with them multiple times. And so I had to learn how to get my ego out of the way while I was standing in front of a person working with them, especially if I had misidentified them the first time, right? Because now I'm sitting here saying, well, I know I said this before, but now I'm saying this. And, you know, how do you know, Susan?
Yeah.
And so what that process taught me is, number one, if I have any sort of niggling that I'm not right, I shouldn't say anything. Number two, always check in with your partner.
Yeah.
Your partner sees things that you don't see. If there's not, and then number four, if there's not 100% consistency in every aspect of the experience, the facial expression, the body structure, the micro movement, the energetic signature, the way the eyes are used in work, and the person has to be completely happy.
Yeah, completely happy.
Completely happy. No, everything you say has to go. They have to go. Of course. There can't be well, sort of. If well, sort of is said, or basically you have not either given them a deep enough experience or you haven't gotten them right. And that willingness to be wrong and correct and just stay with the process until you get to that place where everything makes complete and total alignment. And I had to learn not to hurry, even if there's 15 people staring at me. So I had to learn to perform in front of a community. I had to learn to be wrong in front of a community and correct.
Yeah.
I had to learn not to allow shame, fear, and disappointment to take over my psyche and put me into a state where I was incapable of identifying. Because shame, fear, and disappointment or pride or any sort of emotion that creates a control over your psyche will get in the way of identifying properly. I also had to really, really learn the postures and the subtlety of the postures.
Yeah.
Because I've gotten and I have to keep relearning. Lately I've gotten a little lazy with my 3. So I've been identifying people as 3 when they're not 3, which is very hard to do. as it turns out. But I've actually succeeded in doing that once or twice. And so the net of it is like, don't think you know, ever. And, you know, stay with the process, or really learn the postures. Do the postures perfectly.
Yeah.
You have to have the fullest activation of that energy in your body that you possibly can. And then you have to do it so gently that it invites the soul to align with the body and become more powerful than just the physical structure of the body. And then you have to find exactly the right words. So you have to speak soul to soul with that person in that connection.
Yeah.
And if you mess up any aspect of that, you can lead yourself and them astray.
Yeah. And you lose them.
Yes. So I learned all that by just pushing on people and standing in front of them. And Burning Man's been amazing for that, because I learned about micro movement. Okay, so there's a 6 micro movement, that little lift in the chest. There's a 3 micro movement that's here, and the focus and the smile. Every natural energy has a very specific set of micro movements.
Yeah.
And learning to see them, for me, came seeing people with not that much clothes on, that, you know, they didn't wear a lot of clothes, and seeing 100 people in a day.
Yeah.
And that taught me the micro movement and the specificity of the body. You know, a 6 body just doesn't look like a 4 body. It doesn't. And so that stuff is, you know, becomes, you know, you don't want to override that. And yet there are things that happen to people, you know, abuse of any kind.
Yeah.
And so people do have things that they've done with their body, injuries, substances. There are things that obscure this part of a person. So recognizing when those things are present is also really, really important. You know, how because somebody has something going on with their eyes and they're a connector, you might get misled.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was, you know, we're going back to the how. It's been through first learning to activate my energies in my body, then learning how to manage myself as I stand in front of a person, then learning how to receive and understand what my body is experiencing without becoming rote or habitual about it, and treating each person with total and complete love, holding them with love. I mean, that is central to being able to stand in front of somebody. If they don't feel like you love them, you're not going to succeed.
Yeah, that's same for me. Is generosity. I give all the generosity I have in my soul, and then it's something has happened that's changed them and the way they want to be with me, because that's basically what needs to happen. They have to change the way they want to be with you, so they become themselves.
Right. And then the veil lifts.
Yeah, because when they get into the room, when I meet people or in my seminar or whatever I do, they are not themselves in the beginning, because they want to be typed, or they don't want to be typed or identified, I mean, or they're curious and they don't know what's going on, or they don't understand, they're not their self in that moment. So I need to do that process. So what I did is a little bit, I didn't work with so many people as you did. I worked with people every Wednesday, 1 or 2 people every Wednesday for I've done this now for 7-8 years alone. But I pulled everything in pieces. Every nanosecond of the process, I put it into pieces, and I looked at every little piece of the soul, of the energy, of the movements, of everything that I could do myself to go through a process, because I don't have structure. I'm not arranged in structure. As a tree, as a person who use eye contact and smile and everything is about relationship, I don't know structure. So I seek my higher self through what I shape. Not through what I learn or through what I teach, but through what I shape. Okay, so I need to, I had to shape a structure. So I know exactly the steps of what's going on in the body until the transformation happen, which is the main thing for me, is that they transform and start to teach or learn me to be with them on their level, whatever that is. And then I can understand. After a while, I can understand. I can be with them and talk with them from the soul to soul, which is the language I use. One day I talk with a 7, and it's next day I tell something completely different.
Yeah.
I never say the same to people. I talk to them based on how the soul is shaped in them, who they are, or I will say how the soul have shaped them. Because I believe that the soul is shaping the body.
It could be. I don't, it's hard to know which is shaping which, but there's a shape.
It's a form. Yeah, every person, every type, every one of each of the 9 has a very specific physical form.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think this is a great place to end our conversation. I'll edit this and put it up, and we'll do it again next week. This is fun.
It's fun. Okay.
Yeah.